An eviction notice delivered right to Mayor Bill De Blasio's door. Why hundreds of senior citizens say he does not deserve to live there. I'm Tamara Lane. I'll have the story for you.
The U.S. bishops in Baltimore make a big move to hold themselves accountable for the protection of children and the eradication of clergy abuse. Tankers are attacked in the Gulf of Oman. Tensions are sky high tonight between Washington and Iran. Plus, an outgoing Catholic principal and why her school has a waiting list of students wanting to get in. The news starts right now. Brooklyn Catholics outside Greasy Mansion with demands for the mayor. Good evening, I'm Michelle Powers. An entire city block is packed with senior citizens telling Bill de Blasio to keep his promises about housing, otherwise they want him evicted. Currents News' Tamara Lane reports on the hot button issue.
Housing is not a political issue. Housing is a human issue.
They traveled by bus for hours in traffic. Parishioners from Our Lady of the Presentation in Brownsville, Brooklyn. We were invited to ride on the bus and spoke to seniors affected by the housing crisis.
When you look at seniors not safe in the developments, not living well because of the conditions, and in oversized units, come on now, let's address that.
And how are you feeling right now?
Frustrated, angry.
Angry because they say the mayor has broken a promise he made 1 year ago to budget $500 million for low-income senior housing, something that many think is desperately needed.
When I say we want, you say justice. We want justice. We want justice.
Nearly 80,000 seniors currently rely on NYCHA housing, with an estimated 200,000 New Yorkers over the age of 65 living below the poverty line. This group, coming from Brownsville, has the highest density of public housing units in the country, making this issue close to home. For Tita Concepcion, a leader with East Brooklyn congregation,
good evening.
It's personal.
I live with the seniors that are going through hard times trying to go up the stairs when the elevators are broken. My daughter was assaulted once in these buildings because my doors were not fixed.
Many of those who trekked here brought with them luggage, saying if the mayor was not going to give them the funding they needed, they were going to move in with the mayor. And as you can hear, they're passionate about their demands.
Are you fired up?
Mr. Mayor, you live in a rodent-free, lead-free, mold-free, safe and secure mansion, while 500,000 people are living in dehumanizing conditions.
Father Edward Mason, who was enthusiastically received by the crowd, said enough is enough.
We're here today to remind him of that commitment and say, Mr. Mayor, step up, fulfill your promise, or move out and let some of our seniors live in your nice building here.
The mayor's office has not yet returned our request for comment. This is just one of the housing issues affecting New Yorkers. I will continue special coverage on the New York City housing crisis, reporting on developing rent reform legislation in the days to come. From Gracie Mansion, Tamara Lane, Currents News.
The U.S. bishops wrapping up their three-day meeting in Baltimore this morning overwhelmingly approved new standards on bishop accountability. They voted to enact the Pope's mandate requiring clergy to report cases of abuse to church authorities, including when committed by bishops or cardinals. The bishops debated the new standards and how the laity should be involved in the process. They voted 218-1 that the laity should be involved, stopping it short of making it mandatory. Watching the bishops' meeting very closely is Kevin Clark, the chief correspondent for America Magazine. He joins us now. Kevin, today's vote approved new standards for holding bishops accountable while maximizing, as best they could, lay involvement. The bishops tried to strike a compromise. In your opinion, how did they do?
I think they did pretty well. I think it was a positive outcome. I think there was some degree of misunderstanding going back a couple of days about the new instructions from Rome that they're supposed to be following, the new mandates from Rome from Pope Francis on bishops' accountability. It seems like a handful of bishops believe that the document was limiting, the Pope's document, new instructions on bishops' accountability, was limiting what they could do with in terms of lay oversight. Others understood it as really just creating a floor, not a ceiling on that. we'll probably see that ironed out in the coming year.
But they all agree that they should be implementing the Pope's work.
Yes, that's the the strong outcome here is that they are going to push ahead. There's going to be more accountability. There's going to be a greater lay role to a degree that we haven't seen in many of the dioceses around the country.
Another question for you. So we were talking about the Pope's new law, and he pledges that there will be an all-out war on abuse. How have the U.S. bishops measured up to that?
Well, I think the U.S. bishops really have been in the lead on that going back to 2002. They've sort of set the standard for other conferences around the world. A lot of what you're seeing coming out of Rome are policies that have been initiated here in the United States already, and they're going to go ahead much more stridently on that. I think what's been lacking has been that top level oversight. Who is watching the guys who are supposed to be watching the priests? And to our detriment, we've seen what some of the outcomes of that can be. And I believe that the U.S. Church will continue to play a vanguard role in this.
All right, great. And the bishops' next national meeting will take place in November. What do you expect then? What do they have to do?
Well, like the rest of the church, we have to pick ourselves up and try to move ahead. I think there's a great deal of pessimism. There's a great deal of fatigue, scandal fatigue out there. It's just one Episcopal position after another has been creating disappointment and despair among the people in the pews. And the bishops, I don't think they really addressed that too powerfully this time. And perhaps in November they'll have more energy to address really keeping Catholics Catholic. There's got to be more reasons for us to stay in this church right now. A lot of people are voting with their feet.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a rejuvenation then.
Yeah,
all right,
I hope
Kevin.
so.
Kevin, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Tonight, the Trump White House is blaming Iran after 2 Japanese-owned tankers were attacked in the Gulf of Oman. One of the ships is seen on fire after being hit by what crew members called a shell. Both tankers sent out distress calls this morning, and the U.S. Navy responded to safely evacuate the sailors on the ships. The incident is raising fears there could be a wider conflict. After huge and violent clashes in Hong Kong, the Chinese-backed government is postponing debate on a controversial law that allows China to extradite people in Hong Kong back to the mainland. Bishop Joseph Ha-Chi-Sing celebrated a special mass in Hong Kong this morning, tearfully saying the people just want to live freely and don't deserve the violence. An update tonight about the words of the Our Father. It's the prayer Christ himself taught followers and one of the few things that unites the 2.2 billion Christians across the globe. The Lord's Prayer is changing, at least in one language. Melissa Butts has a story from the Vatican.
Over time, official Vatican changes have been made both to the Mass and to various prayers. But a Holy See official confirms this is not currently happening to any prayers in English. Rumors that the Our Father is changing are true, but only for Italians. The English version will stay exactly the same for now. Archbishop Arthur Roche, the secretary for the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments, asserts it was not the Pope who pushed for this change, but the Italian Episcopal Conference.
No, the Pope isn't changing the Our Father. How could he change what is in Scripture?
This change is taking place now because the Italian Episcopal Conference is remaking their Roman Missal. The entire process has taken them a bit more than 10 years to complete. Archbishop Roche says the phrase, "lead us not into temptation," is the one to be replaced.
Because it says in the Italian text, not to abandon us into temptation, that is why the Italian bishops have chosen to use that phrase.
Archbishop Roche insisted that each prayer should adhere to the vernacular in the country. For example, New Zealand in the past even had a different Our Father than that in the U.S. But now he said everyone has the same prayer in English, and that shouldn't be changing anytime soon. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
The religious exemption to avoid getting vaccinations is on the chopping block tonight in New York. In the face of the worst measles outbreak in decades, the state may soon eliminate it. Both the Senate and Assembly are expected to pass legislation today that would rid of the exemption that has allowed parents of children to cite their religious beliefs to opt out of vaccines required for public school enrollment. Governor Andrew Cuomo supports the elimination, saying public health is at risk. Catholic schools across the United States are facing big challenges in the classroom as enrollment declines and expenses rise. An outgoing Brooklyn principal may have some lessons to teach. There's a waiting list of students trying to get into her school. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
Kathleen Buscemi is retiring after dedicating 45 years to Catholic education, impacting thousands of lives. For the last 17 years, she's been the principal at St. Bernard Catholic Academy in Bergen Beach, Brooklyn. This school is thriving, and there's a waiting list of students who want to get into the classrooms.
I say all the time that we're a family, and we are truly a family.
Big reasons why the school is so popular: Mrs. Buscemi established over 30 extracurricular activities for children and invested in technology in the classrooms, all combined with a faith-based education.
They teach the children to read, write, and do math the old-fashioned way, the same as we do. But we offer that something extra.
Today, students, teachers, and parents are honoring her during a tearful farewell ceremony.
I'm shocked, I'm surprised, it just warmed my heart.
The kids presented her with several gifts, from letters written by every student to her own street sign, Buscemi's Way. 8th grader Sienna Sky Mastrovidi explaining why the principal is so loved.
Well, she did everything she could for us. She helped us. She looked out for us. She guided me, and I know that I wouldn't be who I am today without her.
Catholic education is important to Mrs. Buscemi, and going forward, she's going to mentor new Catholic school principals. Monsignor Joseph Grimaldi is the pastor of St. Bernard Parish.
She has always been that beacon of hope, that beacon of bringing the good news of salvation through the witness of her life, to teach our Catholic principles and our Catholic morals faithfully each day, day in and day out.
And she did so with great success. In Bergen Beach, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
There's a lot more news headed your way. Why a saint beloved by Catholics in Brooklyn and Queens is being celebrated on the streets of Gowanus. The man lived with the wounds of Christ. Now he's receiving special consideration. Bishop DiMarzio talks about a momentous day for him that's coming up on Sunday. Well, he'll be with us in a few moments. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Trumpets marking the coming of a saint, gracing the skyline, but known by name down on the streets of Brooklyn. St. Anthony, the patron saint of lost items, the doctor of the church and powerful Franciscan preacher, is a top favorite for Catholics in Brooklyn and Queens, and he's being remembered today. Believers in Gowanus, Brooklyn say no matter what, they'll never forget about their love for St. Anthony of Padua. Currents News' Emily Druby has the story.
Fanfare filled the streets and prayers filled the pews of Our Lady of Peace Catholic Church. Hundreds gathering to celebrate St. Anthony of Padua's feast day, a beloved tradition in this Gowanus, Brooklyn neighborhood, one that Millie Lamano has been a part of for more than half a century.
My prayers are always answered. That's why I have faith in him. Him and I are like this. I love them.
Millie is 101 years old, but she's still volunteering on this feast day, hanging offerings on the St. Anthony shrine, helping him because as the patron saint of lost items, he has always helped her.
Whenever I lost an item, I always talk to St. Anthony. My prayers are always answered. Whatever I wish for, I was always successful.
If something is lost, you can grab a medal and ask St. Anthony for his help, and that missing item will likely be found.
And you know, the funny part of it all, I find my things, and that's why I have so much faith
Those medals were sold at the church along with flowers, bread, and oils. All have deep importance.
The bread represents the giving of our abundance. The lilies that we have is actually represent of purity. The fragrance that it has, the oils, is used to mix with other oil. Those who are in need of anointing, they could anoint themselves to devotion to St. Anthony and receive graces as well. The medals is to remember the feasts.
Parishioners and clergy also showed their love for St. Anthony by celebrating Mass throughout the day and processing around the street, proving one thing this neighborhood hasn't lost is its tradition. In Gowanus, Emily Druby, Currents News.
The U.S. bishops are putting a Michigan man who lived with the wounds of Christ on the path to sainthood. Irving Houle is credited with many extraordinary physical and spiritual healings. 16 years before he died in 2009, he received the stigmata, the wounds of the crucified Christ. Yesterday, the U.S. bishops unanimously okayed opening a case for his sainthood. This Sunday, our Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio will celebrate his 75th birthday. It is the day he will not only blow out candles, but as canon law dictates, he must submit his resignation as the Bishop of Brooklyn. He's with Ed Wilkinson to speak about looking forward to the future and his plans in retirement. Ed.
Thanks. A big weekend coming up, especially for our Bishop, Bishop DiMarzio, who's with us today. And Bishop, you will celebrate your 75th birthday on Sunday. A big day. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, 75 is a magic number for bishops, as we know. What does that mean to be a bishop and to turn 75?
Well, it means that you need to submit your resignation. Canon law requires that age 75 a bishop submits his resignation. It doesn't mean it's accepted, but it means that now's the time that they have to look for somebody else to take over the reins of the diocese. But that's the rules in canon law.
So it doesn't mean you're out of office. I mean,
no.
And it looks like you have some other things planned and you're ready to serve.
I'm not stopping the train. It's got to keep going. There's things to do, things we can do, and things that have to be done. So we'll wait till I get a call to say, well, there's somebody else who's going to take your place.
Can you give us an insight on who's going to be the next bishop?
I really don't know. This is the army, you know. These you say, aye, aye, sir, you go, and that's it.
Do you have any plans? I mean, I'm sure you've thought about retirement. It's going to be a day when you will not have the same day-to-day duties, and you won't have the same day-to-day worries. What do you plan to do?
Well, I'm going to try to work a little bit more on migration. That's always been my passion. And I'm the president of the Center for Migration Studies in New York City. And I'm going to give them some time.
And it doesn't mean that you're not a bishop anymore. You still can serve as a bishop. You still will have some episcopal duties, right?
Yes, the Bishop Emeritus. Actually, there's a little book. I forgot to bring it today to show you, but there's actually a little manual what they expect the Bishop Emeritus to do and how he should comport himself and not get in the way of the new bishop. But to be there, to be helpful, to be supportive, to be a consultant if needed.
It has to be a little rough, though, because, you know, one day you're at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, there, and you're the guy that everybody seeks counsel from, and the next day it's somebody else and you don't have any.
Well, that's life the way it is. One day you're doing one thing, doing something else. So I'm not afraid of that moment. I think that I'm going to welcome it a bit.
Do you plan to do any extra traveling or moving around?
Not traveling. I'm not too interested in traveling anymore.
How about here in the diocese? Will you?
Well, I'll stay in the diocese. I hope to have a room in one of the rectories, and then I'll split my time. Down the Jersey Shore, where a lot of my family is and friends. So take some time down there, back and forth.
So you will not be living in the Episcopal residence right now?
No, that's for the new bishop.
You would move out and the new bishop would come in?
Right.
Yeah. We have a number of bishops who will be facing their 75th birthday in the next couple of years, right? A number of auxiliary bishops, and have you spoken with them at all about their retirements?
Too much about it. They know when they come 75, they submit their retirement request, and but again, they will stay around. They'll be in the diocese. They'll help. They'll do things. So we're lucky to have so many bishops.
One of the things I know that you have planned for the fall in November, you have to go to Rome for the ad limina visit and make a report to the Vatican about what's going on in the Brooklyn Diocese. What do they ask you for?
Well, it's quite a big report, something like that. I mean, various aspects of the diocese. They'd like to know, since the last time you were there, any changes, what's happening, what's being done. So the financial information is minimal, really, but it's more pastoral. It goes to the different dicasteries or offices in the Vatican, and they read, and then we go visit them, and then they respond back, question us on it, to give us some suggestions or ask some questions about it. So it's an interesting week.
Yeah. Well, Bishop, we want to wish you a happy birthday. Thank you for all these years of service, and we look forward to more time with you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Back to our news desk.
Thank you, Ed and Bishop DiMarzio, and we all wish you a very happy birthday. Now, a special announcement from a Brooklyn king.
Hey, Brooklyn Cyclone fans, this is King Henry from the Brooklyn Cyclones, and I'm here to tell you about Catholic Schools Night at MCU Park on Monday, June 17th.
That's when the Scholars will take on the Collars in a baseball game. The June 17th game starts at 5:45 at MCU Park, though officials are telling fans to arrive early. For tickets, which cost $10, go to fivo.me/Catholic Schools Night, or you can purchase a commemorative bobblehead of last year's MVP, Sister Shirley Tremont, with your ticket for $12. That link is fivo.me/Shirley Bobblehead. Still to come on Current News, Times Square filled with Catholics praying to the Holy Spirit. It's one of the great stories in the tablet this week. Editor-in-Chief Jorge Dominguez will be here with that and more next. This week's tablet has more on Bishop DiMarzio's Big Sunday, written in his own words. Some of the other important stories in the newspaper, the remarkable prayer service at the crossroads of the world, and the U.S. Bishops' meeting in Baltimore. Here with a preview of why you need to read the latest edition is the tablet's editor-in-chief, Jorge Dominguez. Jorge, tell us about the Bishop's column this week. You were very impressed with it.
Yes, I was very impressed. I mean, this Sunday is Bishop DiMarzio's 75th birthday, so happy birthday to him. But at the same time, this is the day when he has to send his resignation to the Vatican. The Pope can accept or not the resignation anytime he wants. And Bishop DiMarzio, in this column, he explains how is the process, when he's expecting the resignation to be accepted, and what is he planning to do after he retires, and what a bishop should do after retiring, not to bother the next bishop. So it's very typical Bishop DiMarzio, factual, very clear facts.
A must read, right, Jorge?
A must read by all means.
Tell me about the tablet's coverage of thousands of Catholics in Times Square.
Yeah, Times Square. You don't think about Times Square as a place to pray, right? Well, there is somebody who thinks differently. Some person from here, Brooklyn, he started this rally last year. Last year was 400 people. This year, 2,000 people. Any kind of people like you find in Times Square. You have to read that article.
And the U.S. bishops, you guys have it from the beginning to the end. What do we look for?
Every detail, the expectations and the results of the important meeting in Baltimore of the U.S. bishops. You can read everything in the tablet this week.
All right, Jorge, thank you. Everything in the tablet. The tablet needs your support to ensure that Catholic journalism will thrive well into the future. You can do so by subscribing to the tablet so that it comes right to your mailbox. You'll save up to 55% by having it delivered to your home versus paying for it at church. Go to the website, thetablet.org/home55, or call 877-883-8356. That is Current News. I'm Michelle Powers. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.